Hi and welcome to this video. So developing strong writing skills is essential for achieving academic and professional success, because every word that you write is an opportunity to improve your communication skills and enhance your ability to convey your ideas with clarity and impact. Writing is a multifaceted skill and it requires attention to detail, structure and organisation. But in this video, we're going to focus on the essential elements required for building effective paragraphs in the main body of an assignment. Because by mastering these skills, you're going to be equipped with the tools to craft compelling arguments that are evidenced and articulate your ideas with precision and confidence. So let's dive in and unlock the power of writing. First of all, so what is a paragraph? So paragraph is basically a series of sentences that relate to a single topic. And I think in terms of being a single topic, the most important thing to remember is you focus on one topic, one paragraph, which is coherent, has a sequence, and there's sufficient development in that. And we're going to talk about that more in this video. Paragraphs in terms of length, that's always a tricky one, but typically it's made up of about 5 sentences or 100 to 300 words, but it's very subjective in terms of that. So I think basically if you've just got a couple of sentences, it's probably not a very developed paragraph, and that's a way to think about it. And obviously use your tutorials to discuss that with your lecturers as well. So typical features of an academic paragraph though include argument, evidence, criticality and examples. So in terms of an argument, or you could use the word discussion, but this will be present in academic writing. So there will be statements made, but there'll be substantiation through evidence. So you'll cite your references to evidence your points, but also you're going to develop that argument, and we will discuss that in a little bit more detail in a moment. But there might also be criticality. That will depend really on what level of study that you're working on, but typically moving into second semester level 5 through to level 6, then we'll really be encouraging you to include criticality in that as well. And we want to make sure that you use examples to illustrate your understanding. The use of examples will really demonstrate that you know how to apply the knowledge to, and it might be professional practice, for example, but you're going to be guided by your lecturers on that for what sort of examples that you might want to use. It's worth bearing in mind, I've mentioned if your paragraphs are quite short, but things to look out for are really, if you've just got short sentences, sometimes paragraphs can read like bullet points because they're so short. So check if you've got paragraphs discussing the same topic, and if they are, then they're more likely need to be combined. But likewise, what tends to happen is that the paragraph really hasn't been developed in detail enough, and so you really need to work on your critical thinking skills or applying those in your writing. And it tends to happen particularly with analysis. And you can look at previous videos that we've got on critical thinking. But what we want to see is that you're developing that building of an argument, that you're asking lots of questions around the material that you're presenting. And make sure that you're also not stopping at your first idea, that you're exhausting a range of different ideas. And keep thinking in mind what else. So I'm going to share with you some models for building a paragraph. The first one I'm going to introduce you to is the Peel paragraph model. So that refers to point, evidence, explain and link. So really what you want to make sure is that you are making an overall point, which is going to be discussed in the paragraph. So one point, one paragraph. And that you include evidence that supports your point. So that's going to be through the references that you quote or ideally paraphrase. so that your argument becomes stronger and more credible. We want an explanation of the point that you're talking about. So, and this will help with your overall argument. So, in effect, you're engaging in debate through using analysis and possibly evaluation there too. The final one, link, is about providing links between your paragraphs to help your argument flow. So usually when you come to the end of a paragraph, the next one that follows through will have some sort of link to the previous one where you can. Okay. Something that I've developed myself is a model for developing academic paragraphs. So this is another model that you can use. You can use whatever you like, but these might help you. So again, I've got my linking statement here. So think about how that links to a previous paragraph where it's relevant. But I'm going to make a claim or make a point, and I'm going to make sure that that point is substantiated with evidence, so i.e. a reference. But where I can, what I want to try and do is strengthen that paragraph by providing support. So I want to provide support to that initial claim. Now I might provide that support with one person, or depending on what level I'm working at, I might provide with a range through use of multiple referencing. But I also might want to extend that initial claim and start thinking about, okay, well, I know that we have got people to support, but actually there might be nuances on that original claim. There might be hold on a minute, we need to think about this. What are their different influences upon that initial claim? So I start to extend and add different perspectives to that claim. And again, I might use one reference or I might use multiple referencing, depends on what level you are working at. I might also then try to see where I might challenge those claims that have been made so far in the paragraph. Now, this might be a full-on rebuttal, i.e., no, I don't agree with this. I've got, evidence that that disputes what's been said. Or I might have a real, hold on, wait a minute. We need to think about this more carefully, and it's not as cut and dry as you might have originally thought. So it might be a full-on challenge, or it might be a scaled back one. And so what you've done here is you kind of built this argument, and as a result of building that argument, you kind of want to make sure that that paragraph just ends up with some sort of conclusion at the end as to what has been learned from that paragraph. So a kind of a mini conclusion, and that's really your evaluative statement. Now that can be quite tricky to do and will take time to develop that skill. Now, throughout all of this, what we try to encourage you to do is, well, first of all, include evidence. That's essential. And what you'll find from the difference from level 4 work, so when you first start through to level 6 through to level 7, is that your evidence will become a lot stronger and it will be a lot more frequent throughout your assignment. Where you can, you might give examples to illustrate your knowledge. So, for example, you might be writing about a research, but you're applying it to, for example, early years. Then being able to demonstrate that in the context of your learning and your subject area will help strengthen the demonstration of your application of knowledge. Now, the last thing I want to point out is critique, and I mentioned that earlier. But when you're making a claim and you're using evidence, then you might start to say why that evidence is credible, or actually if there's any flaws in that evidence that you present. So, for example, you might say that something is essential to do, but you've found that the person that says that it's essential to do something has worked on an example of just 5 people. So you're going to think about how transferable is that, or how generalisable is that research in the first place. So you might just pick out a few points as you go along. Now that is certainly a skill more level 6, and you might develop that earlier. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you 3 examples of paragraphs. I've got basic, kind of an intermediate and an advanced. And this will just give you an idea of where your paragraphs could look like. What I'm going to suggest is that you stop the video at each of the images to take time to read through the text, because I'm not going to read all of that out to you. Okay, I'll just pinpoint some things worthwhile knowing. So I've got my basic paragraph here then, and really what I have done is used references, but I've just used one, Denskin, okay? And there's a fair bit of direct quoting, so we would encourage you to really start paraphrasing here. It's got a decent amount of sentences here. It's focusing on one topic, which is great, which is about grounded theory in this example and keeping an open mind. But there is kind of missing an argument, it's missing additional references here, but it's not bad, okay? It's a basic paragraph and good for thinking about level 4. I'd really push you that little bit further to include other references. So we're going to look at our mid-level, our intermediate paragraph now. Again, stop the video if you want to actually take time to read through this extract. But what you'll notice here is I've introduced a new reference here, not many. But I've started to extend my argument now because I've got Burke and Mills supported by. That's good to see. And the discussion just generally has started to develop. Okay, so this really is a bit more of an improvement in that first paragraph that we saw. So moving on now to the advanced paragraph example. Now this is a lot longer. As you can see, I've actually moved from one paragraph through to 2 because I've developed the paragraph so much more detail now. If you notice that first sentence has now changed from Burke and Mills supported by and Denskin, and instead I've added a multiple reference in brackets at the end. So what that means is Burke and Mills and Denskin all agree that keeping an open mind is necessary. So I've started to develop that more. You'll notice that there is less emphasis on direct quotes. So there's more paraphrasing. When you can paraphrase, it demonstrates that you understand the material. You can synthesize that more by putting it in your own words, which is good to see. I've also got to illustrate, so I've started to give example, and I've also used a couple more references here, Nathaniel and Andrews and McGinley et al. Here, I should mention that the referencing here is using Harvard referencing our form that we use. And I've also started to put some evaluative comments that nonetheless, this is good to see, it can be challenging. So I'm adding and extending the paragraph considerably throughout. Because the paragraph has started to develop and it's about keeping an open mind, a new kind of a topic around the literature review is now seen as needing its own focus and has been developed further as well. And I've started to share issues associated, so sort of despite initial assertions by, so that's starting to evidence that I'm thinking about, we need a different perspectives and view kind of rebuttals in the initial discussion. And certainly this can still be developed. The last sentence here with similarly, Timonen et al. Argue that it can be in fact productive to integrate existing insight. It doesn't say how or why, so that could still be developed further. So hopefully what you've seen here now is different ways that your writing could start to develop over the 3 years. of study. If you're working at master's level, then really you need to be working at this advanced level from the outset. You see from this video that there are a number of different facets to writing academically, and that those skills and the techniques that we've taught you on this video will develop over time. You are on your own journey. Don't compare yourself to your peers. Just work on what you can do and think about what your goals are for developing that further. So you've been given a number of different examples. Look at your work and compare against, and kind of take time to think about, this is where I am now, these are the things that I could start doing. Work on that, build that effectively before moving on to the next stage. Make sure that you do take advantage of your academic tutorials, and take time with your peers as well, with any writing groups that we recommend that you have, to kind of discuss your work and think about how you can develop it further. So I wish you all the very best with this, because I think this really is, when you can crack this skill, this is going to make such a big difference to you and for what your degree means for you as well. So I wish you all the very best, and thank you for listening.